All right, so yeah, we'll get started here. We are Civi. We are a Shy Hacknet breakout group that has been around for the last 2 years, and pretty excited today to kind of present what we've been doing for the last few years. So to get started, Marissa will kind of start talking about the problem.
Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna help get us in the mindset of kind of what Civi is trying to do. None of this is probably going to be new because I think a lot of the problem that we are trying to address really is our daily life. So I have a few questions just to get you all thinking about whether this might be an applicable application for you. So first, do you know who your representatives are? Second, do you know what they're voting on tomorrow? And lastly, do you believe that you can impact that vote? So I imagine we are kind of a group of civically minded individuals, and even within this group, there are probably many of us that answered no to several of those questions. And when you think about kind of the population more broadly, this is a problem that only kind of intensifies. In a 2018 study of survey of 1,500 people in the United States, more than 80% of respondents could not name their state legislator, and a third could not name their governor. In a separate study, the researchers found that 80% of respondents want representatives to pay substantial attention to the general public when they're making decisions, but only 28% of respondents actually believe this to be the case. So we think this quote really kind of summarizes, most people are not aware of who the representatives are and the significant decisions that they're making for their state government. So we're really trying to address kind of these gaps in how do you know about the things that are going on in your local government, the decisions that are impacting your day-to-day life, and how do we increase your ability to feel like you can actually have an impact on those decisions? Because at the end of the day, our government is meant to be by and for us and represent us. So we are trying to really increase that level of representation and engagement with the government that governs our lives. So in this presentation, we are going to walk through a few topics. We'll do kind of a feature overview and a demo of where our product stands today. We'll walk through a little bit of how we got here. So some of the collaborators who have worked on this, some of the different iterations that we've been through. We'll talk a little bit about the data and tech that make Civi work. And then we'll talk about where we're going and how you can help. So now I'll pass it off to Sartaj to walk through some of our core features.
Thanks, Marissa. Before I do a demo of the site itself, wanted to kind of just show different things that are available in the Civi app. So we kind of broke it down by different things that we need to solve for. So one of the first things that we discovered is it's really hard to know who your representatives are. So right here, you're able to put in your address and immediately get not just a list of everyone that's elected, but specifically the legislators, the ones that can pass bills. In addition, putting all of the legislation in one place has been something we've been focused on for a while. So specifically, we do support Chicago, Illinois, and the United States. So seeing legislation from the Chicago City Council, Illinois General Assembly, and then the US House and Senate all show up in one feed. Most people don't think about bills. Most people think about issues they care about. So we actually leveraged some AI tools to be able to tag and different bills by what issues they may be linked to. So the goal here is, if you care about something like healthcare, you want to see all bills related to healthcare or education, then you can see that with these tags. We do show the summary. For example, if they have an official summary, we'll show that. But you can look at this one here, and it says to reauthorize and modernize Part B of Title 4 of the Social Security Act. That means almost nothing to people. So we also use AI to summarize and make it a little easier to read and less legalese by nature. And a final piece is to keep people updated. We just released our iOS app actually last week, and push notifications should be coming here very soon, where we're hoping that this will let people get updates specific to things they care about. Oh, sorry. So while I'm here now, I am going to also try to share Windy Civi's site just to show you how it works. I am not entirely sure if you can see. Are you able to see this? I'm not sure what I'm sharing.
You can see the website.
You can? Sick. All right, cool. So yeah, you can, for example, I can put in North Wacker here, which is the address of where Chi-Hack meets in person. You can see here is the list of representatives, and then let's say I care about healthcare, education, and transit. Click on it, and then now you can see over here there is bills around healthcare, a lot of stuff around healthcare, public safety, etc., education. And so yeah, you can kind of get your feed here, and yeah, see who represents you. You can also technically click on these guys and see all different kinds of links to them. So they have Facebook, Twitter, different kinds of phone calls. So you're able to contact. We are hoping soon to be able to make a more direct connection with the bill itself and directly contacting people, but that's where it is today. The site works as a desktop site, but also technically as a mobile site. So works pretty well. Again, we also have the mobile app on the iOS, on the Apple App Store, and hopefully soon in the Android Play Store too. So with that kind of out of the way in the demo, like wanted to kind of walk into like the process of how we got here in the first place, and the history. In 2022, I made a site called Socratic Center, which the goal was I couldn't figure out who my representatives were, and so I just made a site that could do that. Funny thing, for those that have been around Chi-Hack Night, this exact project in different forms has happened with many different people. I think this is kind of a entryway for a lot of people into entering civic tech. So this was my version of it. From there, we realized we wanted to find a better, like more philosophies and find different partners. Ended up joining the Chi-Hack Night community and seeing different people there. We kind of there was a guy that ran the U.S. House once and was a campaign manager, Brian Burns, and he kind of explained Athenian democracy and the concept of what direct democracy could look like. We also explored some alternative democracy concepts by different kinds of political theorists all over the world. But the general idea was like, can we make it where voters can have more direct impact on the decisions being made? So with that philosophy, kind of in the way we reintroduced the site as Civi Social at the time, which at the time in 2023 had the kind of what you saw today, which is the ability to see local, state, and federal bills. But that's kind of what it was. From there, I'll actually hand it off to Marissa because she is part of my Chicago.
Yes. So in 2023, I was working with a group of students at DePaul. We were working on our capstone for our human-computer interaction master's degree. And so for this capstone, we were kind of challenging the question of legislation is really important and it's written with a lot of jargon, but most Americans or the average American is at the 8th grade reading level. So how can we have a say on this legislation if we can't even really understand it? So our kind of starting point was to say, how can we use modern technology and AI to help bridge that gap and make legislation more understandable to the average person? And so we spent our capstone kind of prototyping this idea. It evolved over time. So you can see some of our kind of mock-ups on the side, where we would have a summarizer that would break down some common questions about why would I vote for this? Am I going to be affected? Try and make it really personal to the user, as well as a wizard to help with engagement. So help walk you through kind of how do you think about this bill and how do we transform that into a message that a representative is really going to care about. So we had a meeting with Jason Kunesh, connected by our professor at the time. And he gave us some really great feedback on kind of how to work on the design and also suggested that we check out Shut Hack Night. And so we came and heard the Civi Social at the time breakout group was meeting, and we were like, that seems like a really great combination. So we attended that breakout group and realized that there was a lot of kind of overlap in our different visions. So where we kind of ended with our unified vision, and this is pulled from the My Chicago capstone, but this really does summarize kind of what our joint vision is. And all of this cycle is about driving engagement with local government. And so we kind of broke it down into four pieces. So one is people have to be motivated to do this. We have to understand why it matters, what we're trying to do, that we can make a difference. And some of the factors that contribute to that, you'll see we kind of represent it as a cycle because all of these really do feed into each other. And so the things that feed into this are making it easy to find legislation, making it easy to understand the legislation, and then making it easy to engage with the legislation. So you'll see a lot of that reflected in some of the demo that Sartaj just showed. We were really lucky to kind of find this product where a lot of the technology was already there. And so we've made it easier to find legislation. We've made it easier to understand, and a little sneak peek for where we're going is working on some of that engagement piece. So to synthesize that a little bit, our defined vision is to increase the engagement of the people with their elected officials. So this vision kind of begs the question a little bit, who is the people? Who are the people? And so this is also, I think, somewhere that My Chicago was able to kind of come in and we were able to work and develop a little bit of focus to some of the technology that we had to say, who is the person we're trying to serve and what do we need to do for them? So throughout the capstone project, we did several different kind of user research methodologies. We had contextual inquiries with residents in Chicago. We talked to some local advocacy organizations and some policy experts. And we kind of devised two types of personas or people who interact with legislation in Chicago. One is a bit more kind of focused or persistent. So this is somebody who is usually tightly coupled to an issue. They've been personally affected. They're familiar with how the system works, and they're really willing to kind of go above and beyond to follow legislation, track it all the way through, call their representatives. And then there are the people who are a little bit more stepped back a little bit further than that. And so they are kind of what we call the efficient resident. So this is kind of you or me on the bus on the way to work, checking our phone, seeing what the local news stories are. Maybe we have an opinion, maybe we follow up. If there's a link to submit a comment, maybe we do. But these are really the people who have a little bit less personal investment in the issue, also often less capacity for engagement. So we really want to reach all kinds of people who live in the city. And so not everybody has kind of the time that it takes to really get educated on these topics. So we want to target people who have a little bit lower capacity, as well as a smaller understanding of the legislative process and some of that initiative to act. So in order to really target these people, our focus is making the app simple and impact oriented. We want people to understand why it matters and make it really easy for them to understand and act on that. So all of that brings us to 2024, our app today. So that is kind of what Sartaj walked us through. We've got the one-stop shop to access all of your bills across the local, state, and federal levels. We have used AI to make the bills human readable. And then we are working on that push notification digest that will be here any minute to help keep you up to date so that you don't have to kind of do that extra legwork to say, okay, where are the bills? It will come straight to you. So now we're going to pivot to talk a little bit about some of the data that actually makes all this possible. And so to start with kind of the core unit, when we talk about legislation, we're talking about bills. And so what is a bill? It is a legislative document and all its history. So that definition comes from the Open Civic Data Standard. So this is something that was actually created by a local Chicago professor, among others. And it is a standard that helps kind of provide uniform language for talking about legislation to make it easier to have more accessible data standards that can be extended across jurisdictions and across cities and geographies. So within that definition, bills are associated with an organization. So that is a legislative body within a jurisdiction. So jurisdiction being something like Chicago State Senate, and then the organization being kind of the group of people within that. So the upper house, lower house, things like that. It's also associated with a session. So there is kind of a time component to bills. So that is the period of time when the organization is meeting, as well as a chamber. So the house in which an action occurred. In addition to common information, bills also have sponsors and actions, related bills, documents, and versions. Sponsors and actions are something that we have acted on. This is often what ties you to a bill because maybe your representative is sponsoring it. And so you have kind of more direct access to the people who are writing the language and crafting the language to get it through. The thing about documents and versions is something that we focused on, or one of the challenges that we encountered, and that's something that makes it actually very difficult to really get a comprehensive picture of legislation, because at least depending on different jurisdictions, they do it differently. But in Illinois, for example, they will post a separate PDF of an amendment. So you don't necessarily see here's version 1, here's version 2, here's version 3. You have to kind of piecemeal create your own version of things. And so that is something that some of the open source data projects have helped us a lot with, to kind of bring that all together so that all the information is kind of scraped and put into one place. So this is kind of a little bit of what I'm talking about. So where are these bills located? They are all over the place. So you can find local legislation on the city clerk website. You can find state legislation on Illinois General Assembly, and you can find national at congress.gov, to name a few. All of these websites have slightly different interfaces, slightly different ways of talking about things and structuring them, different architectures. And so that makes it a big effort to really try and follow all the different bills and all the different places and get kind of literacy with each of the different systems. So thankfully, there are some projects that have come before us that have made this much easier. So big shout out to Chicago Councilmatic from our very own Derek Eater, as well as Open States, which is an open source platform for pulling together state and federal data. And that is also kind of created by that UChicago professor I mentioned, James Turk. So these data sources have made it much easier to kind of pull all that legislation in an organized fashion into one place for Windy City. I'm now going to pass it back to Sartaj to talk a little bit more about some of the tech behind the app.
Yeah, thanks, Marissa. And before I think jumping into the tech, as Marissa mentioned, I do want to give a legit shout out and thanks to Shy Hack Night, because especially kind of what Derek and DataMate have provided with Councilmatic being able to get the data. They've been so helpful from the beginning. We were originally just scraping their site on their UI, but now we're able to hit their databases almost directly to be able to get the data we need. And it has been an awesome experience, that a little bit of osmosis where I think some of the AI summary stuff that we've done, they've also now implemented on their end. And we're hoping that we can also maybe work with Open States in the future for similar things, because these data sources are, when they're able to work on a standard format for bills, it makes building tools on top of that a lot easier. So yeah, thanks DataMate, and thank you Open States, both of which are Chicago-based organizations, which really speaks to, I think, the level of influence that civic tech has in Chicago. So now I want to jump into a little bit of the tech of it. And so I'll go and actually go through the GitHub here in a minute. But the general idea behind our tech is that it is entirely open source, and it can work offline pretty well. We build everything with on GitHub's ecosystem. So GitHub has this thing called Actions, where you can just run any kind of job that you want. And we're also just using GitHub Pages directly to host our site. What this means is the entirety of our ecosystem at the moment is running free. Even the summaries that we're doing, which is we're using OpenAI, we're at such a low level of usage because we just summarize things once. We are under their like free tier and whatnot. And yeah, it's a single page application with a lot of different kinds of influences. I can kind of go through real quick and show the GitHub site. So for those that are this, I'm gonna get a little nerdy here. For those that can't follow, feel free to tune it out for a minute or two, but I'm hoping to get my nerds out there and give them something good here. So we do run everything out of GitHub. We even code out of GitHub, so we're using GitHub code spaces. For those that know dev containers, it means people can just set up their environment immediately and start contributing. As I mentioned, we're using GitHub Actions, which run all the things like scraping data, scraping Chicago data, scraping Illinois data, making the summaries, getting the US data. So when these jobs run, what they end up doing is making this thing called a nightly release, where we have a list of all their JSON files that just have all the active bills across each one. And because we are kind of just using GitHub directly, this hosting of these files is free for us. So it was one of the hacks we learned from other Shy projects that you can just save JSON files on GitHub for free, and it's been an awesome way for us to handle it. And then yeah, we also have deployments that happen to GitHub pages. So every time we push to the main branch, there'll be a new update to the site within like 3 or 4 minutes. We do everything from spell checking to testing, etc. And we have this in a what's called a mono repo format, and we have different repositories for the different pieces. The domain has all the content around just like the business logic. We do have a native app that was made by one of the volunteers, Andy, and that was just released to the App Store, the iOS App Store last week, and we're hoping to get to the Play Store soon too. We're working on that push server, so that's over here, and then yeah, the scraper does all the scraping stuff, and the web app is here. The native app just wraps the web app in a wrapper for now, and I think probably continue doing that for the time being. Something I'm pretty proud of is you can even look on the bottom right. We've had quite a few contributors on this repo over the years, and yeah, we've continued to have different kinds of people, both kind of software engineers and people just getting started, kind of contributing. So we'll continue trying to do that. So yeah, that's kind of the tech for now. In terms of tech that we may look at in the future, we have explored decentralized technologies. We're hoping to make it possible to have direct interactions with your state representative, and there are some decent distributed blockchain tools that we think could be useful for that. For like, for example, telling an elected representative how they want to vote and whatnot. But yeah, that's more on the exploration world, and we're always open to kind of being on the kind of very edge of technology with our stuff. In terms of milestones of where we've been, so we started building something kind of useful, hopefully, like in the last year or two. And we made this milestone ladder almost a year or two ago. And it was funny to like bring this into the slides and be like, oh, this is still accurate. So it's been nice. And yeah, today we are sharing with, the tech community, the Shy Hack Night community, hoping to get feedback and whatnot. And then from there, our goal is to find a pilot district to work out of. In terms of what we are, before we think about the future, where we are right now with the site, our goal, we do have a very kind of a specific goal here, which is just to get 100 daily users, hopefully at least 30 on Android and 30 on iOS, and at least 30 users that have enabled push notifications once we have that out, because those for us will be indicators if there are people coming back often and they have push notifications or they have push notifications enabled. That means they are receiving updates about bills, and that's kind of the signal that we're using. For the future, there's a lot of like tools out there, both in real life and online, that we are looking at to like make this a better tool over time. We're hoping to maybe be more invested in street festivals in the summer in Chicago. It's a big place where people in neighborhoods kind of congregate. As I mentioned earlier, looking at decentralized tech. We want to have continuous harm assessment as we're going through this. Like, right now when you have no users, it's not that big of a deal. But as you grow, the existence of this tool could do things like impact, for example, how a legislator even writes their bills because they know it's going to be on the site. So we want to be kind of continuously assessing different ways harm can happen. We've already done that, for example, with the AI summarization and making sure that summaries don't overall aren't the only way you can like get a summary. We've incorporated something called a wiki summary that allows humans to provide their own summaries too. We're hoping to facilitate town halls. While a lot of the stuff is online with what we do, I think we do see the physical neighborhood element being a very critical point, and so we're hoping to see how we can kind of enter that realm. As mentioned earlier, for people to be able to vote on active bills and let the legislator know is something we've been wanting to explore for a while. And related to that, being able to verify that you're a resident, so then the representative knows that this vote is from somebody that is my constituent. And that kind of jumps into a recent announcement that actually happened this week, which is the 13th district, which is represented by State Representative Han Win. They have agreed to become our pilot district, where we are hoping to explore these different kinds of tools, but directly work with the state rep there and the managers there to like help design this tool that makes it where verified voters can give active feedback, but also elected officials can read that feedback in a consumable way. Something that I've been told by many elected officials at this point is when you send an email or when you send a phone call, they're not gonna read it, they're not gonna listen to it. There's too many, and it's not realistic for one human that oversees 150,000 people to be able to listen to every single one. So being able to give individuals an individual voice while also making it consumable for the elected officials is something we're very interested in. A mock-up on the right here, you can see, is a potential engagement report that we could be sending to the elected official, letting them know, hey, there are, let's say 400 verified voters in your district that are on Windy Civi, and they voted on different kinds of bills and said they want you to vote yay or nay against different kinds of bills. So we are very excited to be doing this actively with Rep. Conway and his team, because designing this in a vacuum with our like tech brains will not give us kind of the real world kind of implications that they're dealing with, and kind of working with the boots on the ground is something that'll be super fun. So how can you help? This is kind of where we kind of ask to see what people can do. So for those that have their phone out, the way you can help if you're an Android user is to get on the Play Store. The reason we're not on the Play Store is Google now requires 25 active users to do testing before they even allow you on the Play Store. So please scan this QR code or go to bit.ly/WindyCiviSurvey, fill it out, and let us know that you're an Android user, and we'll be able to put your email on a internal tester list, and you'll get an email about being able to download the app. So yeah, please do that. For iPhone users, just getting 30 active users right now with the app where it is, giving feedback where possible. There's a feedback link on the site. You're able to use that. Obviously, App Store itself also has a review tool. Feel free to use that also. But yeah, both of those you can do via the QR code. And even if you're neither, just if you can go to the survey and fill it out, there's some like just general information that we're hoping for, including things, for example, around the 13th district if you live there, and maybe we can contact you as we're kind of going through that. So yeah, that's pretty much our presentation. The QR code is still there. I'll wrap up with this quote that I find to be very specific for what we're trying to solve for, which is, In an era of sharp disagreements between Democrats and Republicans, there's one thing Americans can agree on. They believe that elected officials are not paying enough attention to the general public. So this is exactly what we're hoping to solve and kind of make better over time. So yeah, that's it. I guess, Marissa, if you want to come back in frame, I guess we're open for questions now.
All right. Thank you so much for the presentation. A reminder, folks can submit your questions and we'll ask them. And I'll go ahead, as questions are coming in, I'll go ahead and get us started. Can you speak a little bit more about some of the use cases that you see for policymakers or elected officials?
Yeah, so some of the use cases they're a different audience than what a regular citizen is. So we imagine that an elected official will be able to sign on to our site and then get a kind of dashboard of people in their district and like subscribers that are in their district and get a pulse for like how those subscribers or how those people in your district are wanting you to vote in different ways. So we imagine there'll be a tool to say, hey, there's an active bill on the consumer or on the citizen side, click a vote button, they can click a vote. And then on the elected official side, they can get like a summary at the end of the voting period on that.
Okay, thank you for speaking to that. We're starting to get some questions from the audience. So I'll ask the first one, which is, do desktop testers users count or only Android users towards the 25 minimum?
Yeah, no, it works on desktop. Please, yeah, use the QR code and give feedback. And when you're on the desktop site, you'll see a give feedback link. Significant amount of the feedback we want is not specific to a device. The email for the device is just to get on like the beta testing kind of flow, but yeah, desktop user feedback is definitely much appreciated.
Great, thank you. I'll ask the next question here, which is, how do you manage self-selection issues with who gives feedback? It's a common problem that community meetings skew towards retirees because they're often, I think maybe there's a word missing here during the workday, but I could see an online tool skewing a very opposite way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and it's something that we're going to be really mindful of in kind of the engagement phase. A big goal is that we are truly representative of all the people living in Chicago. So I think this is somewhere where we can kind of go back to some of those user research roots and say, what are the different populations we're trying to reach? What are the different places that they are and the different times that they are free, so we can really meet people where they're at. I think there's different approaches where we can either kind of target different populations individually and say, like, we can come to a farmer's market and have something where people are, or we can do something during the workday for those are free. During after work, we could do something and really trying to partner too with community organizations. I think a big part of the engagement goal is really to kind of return to the ideal of we are actually all part of a community. So I imagine there's lots of opportunity to partner with community businesses and things like coffee shops where people are already going and kind of just build that network. I think a stretch that would be really great to achieve too is I think there's also the selection bias of like within a group of people who are going to show up to one event, they might think very similarly. And I think we have a nice opportunity to do some facilitated dialogue for folks who don't necessarily see eye to eye on the issues too, to restore a little bit of that kind of civility with our neighbors and be able to talk about, okay, we have disagreements on how we should vote on this policy or how the budget should be spent over here. And I think in a way, doing that on kind of a local level kind of takes some of the heat out of the conversation. And so I think those are kind of the two angles are we want to make sure that we are finding all the different types of people where they are and finding ways to kind of mix that up a little bit and develop a program that is enticing enough that people want to kind of go out of their bubble and talk to people who maybe think a little bit differently.
Yeah, and to like add on to I think what Marissa said, you know, we've talked about both in person and online kind of sources. And something that multiple representatives have mentioned to me is when you're an elected official, you do end up seeing the same number of people over and over again at all the events. And I think a lot of that does skew towards people that have more free time that can physically go to events. And a lot of that, I think, historically has ended up being slightly older people. But I am less worried about the skew happening on the online side because a lot of those people are currently not engaged at all. So to have them engage, it from an elected representative's perspective, it's not just Windy Civi that they're using. They're also still meeting those people in person. And for their holistic, like I think as Marissa said, meet them where they're at, like that'll just be another channel. And I think as a kind of project on our end, we don't always want to like continue to be online only. We're hoping to, again, meet people where they are. I would love to find a way to to get into Julasco, but I don't know if that's possible, but it'd be an easy way to, really meet where a lot of people are.
All right, thanks, y'all. We've got a few more questions here. Timeless question here for Shy Hack Night. How do you manage onboarding folks during Shy Hack Night with getting work done on the project? Did you have a lot of volunteers come and go from the project over time? How'd you handle that?
Yeah, we've had different contributors over the years. And it's funny is like right now in this room, I see a list of people. Actually, you know what? Can we do something? Can y'all come in frame real quick? I want to do something. I'm doing a remix here. Did not tell them I was doing this. But yeah, if y'all can all come in frame. So this is Brian Burns. This is the tall one. I know the camera's a little low. That was a campaign manager and he ran for US House for a while. And I think his kind of legal background has really provided a lot of like a lot of the core, I would say, like spirit of the project. Andy is the one that built the native app and he just joined a few months ago. And he just like sent it. It's been incredible to see how fast and effectively he's been able to work. Kyrie, who comes from a data science background and he's been working on this for the last year and he built out the wiki feature and all kinds of stuff. I guess from my perspective, this is a volunteer project, so I never expect anybody to complete a job. And I just assume nothing will get done, including on my end, because it is a hard project. The way that I think I've managed it is try to always find small issues, like small projects that like a person can just run into and kind of, finish it out themselves. Also just a lot of collaboration and whatnot. I don't know if y'all wanted to add anything.
I think just if anyone's interested in joining, just come to the breakout groups. I think that's how pretty much everyone.
Well, may I speak about onboarding, please?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, this is coming from experience of onboarding a DevOps manager. And a lot of it has to do with the collaboration tools like Jira, GitHub, etc. So I've used Ansible to automate some of that to like, hey, we're onboarding you and we're offboarding you. And so one thing from an information security standpoint is you have to make sure that you can onboard people effortlessly.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I thought you maybe were a project contributor, but this Q&A is only for folks that contributed to the project. So I'll interject here, but feel free to share your comment in the chat or ask a question. I'll go ahead and move on. And we have a question here around the product looks great. I'm so glad you've deployed it. I do have a slight problem with AI, just in terms of energy usage. I've seen estimates of somewhere between 8% and 18% of global energy being used for AI by 2030. Is it really worth it?
Um,
yeah.
I want to first maybe just answer Radar's question a minute ago about the tooling of project management stuff. We have gone through a lot of different project management tools. I think we did Jira once, we did Asana, we did Trello, we did Notion, oh my God.
Google Sheets.
Slacklist. Yeah, and I think two things that have remained consistent is the Slack and the GitHub. And I think it's been nice that we've always been able to come back to that. I think because the project is not that honest, we're not like a team of 50 people, like we've been able to continuously just work on whatever tool, like the current, I usually just end up using the tool, the current iteration of like volunteers like using. And we're not being on project where it matters. But yeah, now if you want to answer the AI energy question.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's something that we both think about in terms of the environment, and obviously we have lots of projects at Chinook Mike focused on that. And I think there are other concerns with AI in terms of bias and kind of interpretation of different legislation and how much do other people trust it. So I think it's something that we are open to down the line. Like there's a different version of this where we have a staffed organization and we can have kind of people doing translations. I think there's a bit of a trade-off of whoever you have doing the summarization, we need to have standards for building trust. And so I think this was kind of the lightest lift. Let's get people started thinking about what this could look like. But I think that is something that we're definitely open to reconsidering. I think there are different organizations that do similar things for some who have even presented here, but for like summarizing different town hall meetings and things like that. And so I could definitely see a shift to kind of volunteer based. But I think that's a little bit more difficult to scale at the beginning. So I think that's a lot of where the value comes for right now. And it's definitely something that we can reconsider as resources shift.
Yeah, something I can like add to this is we don't spend any dollars on OpenAI right now because our summarization tasks are so little and cheap. Like things we've done on our end is we only summarize something once. We don't keep summarizing it every day. Because of that, there's only a couple of thousand summaries. That actually does not when people are worried about the water problem with energy usage and just energy usage with AI in general, at my day job, I'm doing integrations with AI right now. And we are, the way we're hitting AI is on an order of magnitude, like exponentially higher than what Windy Civi will ever do. And it is a problem that needs to be solved, but we're kind of like a penny in like a sea of gold bars. If that makes any sense.
I think the following question was similar around concerns with the content in the AI summaries in terms of accuracy or bias. I know that you spoke to that a little bit there. Is there anything that you wanted to add there?
I think this is something that Sartaj mentioned. We've done kind of harm analysis to see where potential harm could come in, and this is one place that we identified. And so one thing that we have done is try to be very transparent that this is an AI summary, and so take it with a grain of salt. We link to the official summary and the official text if you want to kind of gut check anything. I think this is also something that kind of with advanced resources, you can do more training on kind of your own large language model to process some of this and target that a little bit more directly. I think some of the other things we try to do are with the prompt itself, try to make it very focused on just a literal summary of what is here with no kind of editorializing or anything like that. And so those are some of the kind of the reasonable mechanisms that we've put in place so far. But I think it's a question that we're kind of consistently revisiting and are definitely open if there are kind of additional suggestions for how to mitigate any potential bias there.
Yeah, and a struggle that I think we've had, and we're actually probably going to see very clearly in a month from now, is rarely the AI summary that's the problem. It's the source bill's wording that's the problem. So like, for example, there was a bill last year, forgot the exact words, but it was something along the lines of like, Protect Babies' Lives Act or something like that. Like the name of the bill implies a bias built into it that feeds itself throughout the legislation and everything. And so when the AI summarizes it, it summarizes it based on the language of the bill itself. So, you know, one of the problems that I think a lot of people don't know is that they don't know how these bills are worded. And we're hoping that this AI summary will get people more into like, hey, this is how these bills are being worded right now. And it's like kind of important to know that. And we're hoping that the AI summary can help people kind of get more into it without and again I think as Marissa said, like the general populace is aware of AI at this point, and when they see an AI like generated like stamp on anything, I think they're aware to take it with a grain of salt.
Thank you for walking through that. I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions here. The next question is, what is the best way to send you feedback on the product?
Great question. So one is, I don't know if we're still screen sharing, but that QR code there, or the URL bit.ly/Windy City Survey, go there and check it out. The other option is if you actually go to, I will just go to the website real quick and show, but you are able to go to the site and you'll see a big give feedback link right here. It'll show up on mobile apps too, and then it'll take you to this beautiful Google form, and you'll be able to kind of give us feedback. So, yep.
Wow. So simple. Thank you. We've got
Google Forms are incredible.
Sean, did you want to ask this, or do you want me to go ahead and read it off?
I can do it from behind the scenes. So just thinking, you know, I'm sure I won't name them, but we can think of quite a few politicians who are technophobes or at least don't see the value in open source technologies such as this. So how do you envision in the future winning over some of those politicians?
Oh, our hyper focus, it says maybe for myself, my hyper focus has been Chicago based districts, because we like before we spread to a lot of representatives, we just want to make sure this looks really well for the 13th district. Things specific to the 13th district that are kind of unique, the very high turnout rate for Chicago. They have like tens of thousands of people on the newsletters for state representatives. Pretty active, engaged community that has, you know, a specific type of demographic. That's not going to work in Lincoln, Nebraska. And that's going to be different. When we do, I think if we are able to have a successful 13th district, I think the next step, I would love for us to explore a very opposite district that would probably be maybe more not as comfortable with tech, maybe not as comfortable with a lot of these things, and see like how it works out in that environment.
Yeah, I think one thing I'll add there is we have really kind of focused on residents are our user. And so politicians are kind of or elected officials are kind of a user through the value that they add to residents. So residents want to be heard and they want to feel like their elected officials are listening to them in their decisions. And so I think that framing helps a little bit of like, we are really trying to make sure that there is features that make it easy to centralize those residents' opinions in a way that can be heard. And to Sartaj's point, I think once we have a successful kind of demonstration of this works for people, at the end of the day, people are the ones who put officials in place. And so if we can get this to be on the same level as kind of public polling, I think that is something that officials do listen to, because if you vote the opposite way of what the people want every single time, they're going to vote you out at some point. And so I think there is kind of a mutual interest here of we want users to have a place to actually share opinions on the decisions that their representatives are making throughout the year, not just during elections. And so I think that will, when the engagement is there, that will become something that I think hopefully officials will kind of need to listen to is the grand vision.
All right. Thank you so much for presenting. And we'll look forward to seeing how the project grows. I'll transition us, and thanks to all the folks who provided questions, comments, and feedback. It's appreciated. But I'll transition us to the next portion of the evening. I think Sean, maybe we've got some slides for breakout groups.
Yeah, and I'm actually gonna Victor's also, or excuse me, not Victor. Victor just entered. Vian is actually was gonna lead us to the next part. So
Okay.
if everyone
then-
just holds tight a second, I'll make this switch. All right, be right back.